Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining Tuesday Together Talk. I think, Carrie, we're going to give the people a few more minutes. Hopefully, we can get folks to come on in the room. We got Carrie back in. Hey, Lo, how are you? Dang, Lo, I've been missing you. I've been missing you. How are you this evening, Lo? So I am excited because we have Miss Caroline Hepburn Brown back hanging out with us once again. It's been a while. It's been a while, but we're glad that she is here to hang out with us. Lori says she is doing wonderful. I am glad to hear that. So as we are just kind of waiting a little bit for some people to catch up with us, I know it's still a little bit early, 6:03. Um, I am excited to once again have Carrie here with me because, geez, Carrie, I can't remember last time you were here.
I think it might have been last year,
It
darling.
was last year. It was last year. My goodness, so time has flown by, and here we are. Geez, already at the end of month four. Um,
Don't remind
and
me.
so thanks be to God that we are still pushing forward. So
Amen.
once again, good evening, everybody. I'm Reverend Rebecca Burrow. I am the founder and CEO of Building Reconciliation, Inclusion, Diversity, and Gender Equity. Y'all know at this point, to you all, we are known as Bridge. We are here once again to do what we do, and that's to talk about some of the issues and things that are presenting challenges for us here in the state of Florida. However, we're gonna not just talk about the issues; we're gonna talk about the solutions as well. We want you to keep abreast of what's going on. Whether they don't want you to be woke. Have you noticed that's the new thing? The new thing is to say we're awake, not woke. Really? Is that what y'all coming back with? Okay, well, that's a whole nother story. So just before I let Carrie dive in, I want to just kind of talk to you about what I have been contemplating as we move into this evening. As I was thinking about the conversation for this evening, the questions that kept looming in my mind is why and what? What is DeSantis, the state senators that vote in favor of these legislations, and the various alliances and groups that are supporting and cheering on these legislations? Uh, I keep wondering, what is it that they really want? What? What is it that they want? Do they want the country to resemble their family structure? Do they want to restrict Black people's right to vote in hopes of limiting their power and voice? Why is it they want their children ignorant of the history of this country? What is it that they want? And the reason I'm asking these questions is because they insist their motives aren't racially motivated, right? Their agenda is not racially motivated. They insist that equality in America is thriving. However, it amazes me that none of these laws target groups who aren't already marginalized. So, why? We're going to get into the context of these laws in just a few minutes, but before we do, I have just one more thing to place on your mind. All of these recent laws are designed to adversely impact Black people. However, I have news for DeSantis and his supporters. These laws will ultimately adversely impact the entire state of Florida. Why am I saying that? Because these laws were not written with the hope for our future generations in mind. They are short sighted and were written and enacted to meet the selfish needs of a few people. However, if you study all of these laws closely, they all can be challenged and work in our favor. The very laws that were designed to hurt, we can turn them around on their head and make them launching pads for doing great things and creating some real equity in the state of Florida. So I want you all to start thinking about that comment, the commentary that I just made as we introduce. Well, Carrie, you can introduce yourself. You've been around here long enough. Introduce yourself.
Hello, TTT family, and happy Tuesday. It is such a pleasure to be back with you all. Formerly, I serve as the CEO and principal consultant at Onyx Strategic Consulting, where we are working to create a more equitable world. I'm doing that through a number of ways. A part of it is using my voice, and most recently, I've gotten an opportunity to get more involved in listening and engagement. And so it's always a pleasure to share and to hear back from you all what you're thinking and how you're feeling. So Rebecca and I have been having this conversation, oh gosh, probably 2 or 3 weeks just among ourselves. And so I'm excited for the conversation and excited to sort of think about with you what we can do and to share what's on my mind.
Yes, thank you, Carrie, so much. I appreciate you so much for being here because, as you mentioned, we have been having these conversations. We do this from time to time when we have had it up to here. Uh, every now and again, we have to have one of those venting sessions, which often will lead, though, to us trying to figure out the solutions. How can we make things better? How can we bring this information to the people so that you are well informed as you start thinking about the voting season that's right upon us. So, Carrie, I started off. I want to ask the folks real quickly. Y'all ask us whatever you want to know this evening, but I also want to ask you some questions, and I want the audience to participate in this. Are you familiar with Senate Bill 148? Just drop in the chat if you are, and if you're not, let us know. But if you are familiar, let me know what you think about it. Let us know what you think about Senate Bill 148. I want to start with Senate Bill 148 because that was kind of the launching pad for some of the foolishness that is occurring right now down here in Florida. And as you all know, that Senate Bill 148 is that very special measure that the governor decided to implement so that he could tell us how to the education systems and also private businesses to help them learn that they can't talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. They can't talk about anything that will make people uncomfortable. So it was known at one point as the discomfort law because it was really designed to make sure that white people, particularly, weren't feeling uncomfortable when it came to talking about some of the white privilege, some of those things that we talk about a lot on Tuesday Together Talk, and also Black history. That was another piece of it. Any of those cultural things that makes folks feel uncomfortable, then now that the schools can actually be penalized and parents and employees can bring lawsuits against whatever entity is talking about those measures, and if the people feel uncomfortable when those particular things are being discussed. So, Carrie, talk to me for a minute about your thoughts on Senate Bill 148.
Yeah, so I think it's ironic that the bill is actually titled Individual Freedoms.
Yes.
Because what it seeks to do is prohibit some of those individual freedoms. I think one of the comments that you made during your opening commentary, which is we need to become familiar with the law, particularly the language therein, not just the high level stuff, so that we can learn how to use it for our benefit. I think that's really important. But I do want to just back up for a moment and say this in general, because I've really been, as I said, we've been talking about this, and I've been struggling in general with what we are seeing politically. And for a couple things that I'll just assertions that I'll make. The system is set up to accomplish exactly what it is accomplishing. All of the systems, all the isms are, in my mind, set up to maintain power and control. I believe that there were very clear signs that that power and control was slipping away from white supremacists. We've seen it in the upswell of the response after the public awareness of the murder of George Floyd, and subsequently we've seen the tide really turn. So one, I just want to point out that these are not new tactics. They're just new versions of things that have been done in the past. And so, one, I want us to be hopeful because of that, because we realize, at least in my perspective, that this is a sign that we've made progress, because there's such a vigilant, aggressive attack to try to stop some of the things that's happening. So personally, I think the Senate Bill 148 is a mess. I mean, really, I don't know how else you can describe it other than to say, to me, it shows insecurity and fear. It actually makes assertions that are inaccurate, because the idea of moving forward in racial harmony and healing requires all of us to be uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable is not a negative thing. It's not a bad thing. Being unable to work through that discomfort is actually the thing that I think is most important, and what this bill seeks to prevent from happening. So I was, doing a little bit of research, and there are several lawsuits around some of the things that are happening that will, some of the issues that we'll talk about tonight. This is certainly one of them. The ACLU is one of the ones, I believe, leading efforts to use this. But I think there is the other perspective that you talked about, which is how can we use it to our advantage? So if we are in situations where we are uncomfortable and there is a feeling of discomfort, let's pull the law out. Let's file a workplace harassment charge. Let's talk about it. Let's try the law on its case merit and see what happens. So I do think there's the opportunity to do that. And then finally, and this is probably a more holistic answer, I do also think, though, that those of us who are, I would just say, politically moderate, you don't even have to be an identified Democrat, but those of us who are politically moderate or liberal, I think, need to be clear about what it is that we believe in, what our message is, and we need to stick to it rather than continuing to play defense. I've said this before, rather than continuing to play defense, we need to go on the offense and just talk about what we believe and what we support. And I think that's one of the reasons that our the other side is able to be so successful, because we keep being defensive and reactive instead of proactive.
Thank you, Carrie, so much for just kind of laying some of that out. The individual freedom law. Now, there is a specific place in this law that talks about that no person is supposed to be made to feel discomfort or psychological distress in the presence of diversity, equity, and inclusion conversations in work. We know that typically when you go into your onboarding or when you're going into new employee orientation, they talk about sexual harassment, they talk about diversity, they talk about those things. Now the law states, even for your private businesses, from my understanding, private businesses are also held to this law as well. So if you are a business, it amazes me that now the very same folks that have talked about keeping government small and not coming into our personal businesses and all that, things dictating us what we can talk about and do, they are now saying that they have a right to they have a right to tell you what you can and cannot discuss as far as equity and inclusion and cultural competencies and all of those other things we have a need to continue teaching to create equity and justice in this world. So I'm concerned about the fact that they really haven't highlighted the law in a way where we can understand it to work in our favor. So what I'm suggesting is that, when you start talking about history and when you can't include my history in that, when you're talking about US history and you can't include Black history in US history, that makes me uncomfortable. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so we need our parents to start educating their children so that they understand that they can also say they are feeling uncomfortable
Right,
because
right.
they are being excluded. Their lived experience, their ancestors' lived experiences are being excluded from history. That makes me uncomfortable. That also causes me some psychological distress because now you're trying to paint me invisible.
Yep.
I'm just saying. So what I want us to do is start grabbing hold of these laws and reversing them, use it against them, the very ones that wrote it. Now, what I'm hoping, as I'm talking about using the laws that, turning them on their head and using it to our advantage, I want us to start thinking more about the bridge that we need to happen. We need some people on each opposite side of this bridge to come together and unite and think about the why and the what so that we could start being realistic about our children's future.
Mm-hmm.
This foolishness that's happening in Florida right now cannot sustain itself. And the fact that people think that there are no consequences to this foolishness. And let me be very specific because I don't want the people to think I'm trying to threaten anybody in that kind of way. I'm just talking about biblically speaking, since so many of these folks claim that they are on the Lord's side. Biblically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
this foolishness cannot sustain itself because it's contrary to everything that God says that we are supposed to do for one another. Love thy neighbor as thyself.
Right.
We're supposed to love justice, right? So this can't sustain itself. And I'm really concerned that it's been too quiet for me, Carrie. It's been too quiet. And we need a little bit of noise right now.
Right, right.
Let me real quick just read Rachel's comment. She says, no, I am not familiar with Senate Bill 148, but now that you're breaking it down for everyone, Miss Rebecca, that they need to be uncomfortable. The truth needs to be spoken. These ignorant people want to keep the truth hidden so that they can pick and choose what they want to share. And unfortunately, Rachel, some of it is ignorance, but some of it is because they don't want that they know, as Carrie indicated earlier in her conversation, they knew that the country was beginning to look different. The fiber of the country was moving towards a place of equity and inclusion, and it scared the crap out of the folks that felt that they were losing their grips on power.
Mm-hmm.
Carrie?
Yes, love.
Go for it.
Where to go? I think some of what you said is all of what you said is relevant. The other thing that I think I want to get back to is, yes, we need to understand what the law says so that we can use it, so that we can use that language. And we have to get on the offense. I cannot get off of that. The other thing that I'm thinking about, and I know that as we continue this conversation, we'll dive deeper into this, but one of the things that I was doing as I was preparing today was I just did a general Google search on NPR News to see what they were talking about in Florida politics. And the first article that came up, and I'm going to share this in the group later, is a question that really asks, what is the fate of Florida? So as we hopefully all know, Florida has traditionally been one of the most talked about uh, states in the political arena. We can trace back. I did not even realize that the election that happened between Bush and Gore happened in 2000. I remember going to conferences shortly thereafter, and I was embarrassed to tell people that I was from Florida because they would make those hanging Chad jokes, and they would ask all those questions. We live in a state that has regularly been seen and highlighted on the political landscape in terms of what it is, what it has done right and has not done right. And so I want to bring up now, as I think about what other things can we do? Yes, we can educate ourselves about the law and begin to understand how can we work with it. And we also have to start talking to people about getting out and registering to vote.
Yes.
Historically, every single time there's a midterm election, there is lower voter turnout. I think we have to start, number one, talking about that. And then I think the other thing is that we have to really start thinking long term. The reality is it's not just the governor. It's both the House and the Senate. And we'll get into redistricting and how that is going to play significantly in what happens. But the reality is that even before the current maps have been redrawn, I think the number was 11 Democratic leaning seats versus the rest, which would have been around 20 or 21. That in itself, for as much as we talk about that we are a purple state, there is research to prove that we are getting pink and also possibly even red. The other thing is that I don't think that we're staying abreast of what's happening. I have heard situations and done some individual research around people who particularly seniors who are being approached to quote unquote renew their registration or update their voter registration, and they end up with their political affiliation being changed. So this is one thing I want to say to make sure that we're all aware of this. And I know, Rebecca, we've talked about this before. Florida is a closed primary state. I support you wholeheartedly if you want to actually consider yourself a liberal, independent, any of those things. Yeah. When it comes to politics in the state of Florida, that is the most harmful place to be registered, because what it does is it prevents you from having a voice early in discussion. And we know last month, it was earlier this month, you had candidate Dr. Keisha Benson, who's running for a county-wide school board district seat. And we said the same thing. We can win it in August if people come out to vote. And so the point that I'm making is it's important to let our voice be heard loudly and often. And if you are not registered as either a Republican or a Democrat, you do not have the opportunity to vote in primary situations where these kinds of things matter. Now, it just so happens that the school board is not a partisan seat, but we have others that are. And I think those are some of the long-term strategies that we really have to start thinking about. And we have to start thinking about them now, because actually November is not even our deadline, right? I mean, we need to have people registered and ready to go to the polls in August. All of the things that we talked about doing last time around when we're, souls to the polls and all of these, having people watch for voter fraud. These are things that we need to we need to start talking about these things again. It's the same situation. We need to register to vote, right? Register to vote now, and talk to the people around you. Verify, are they registered to vote? And what we do know is that from the pandemic, as a result of the pandemic, Florida has seen an upswell, an increase in the number of people who have moved to Florida during the past 2 years. Those are people that work with, otherwise engage with. Find out if they're registered to vote. And I honestly don't care how you're registered. that's not what matters to me, because once you get into that booth, you can vote however you want to. But what's important is to understand very few states are closed primary states. Florida is one of them, but the other thing is you have to be registered to vote. It's one of those states that you can't register the same day and vote, all of those things. So we have to start paying attention to deadlines, time frames, and the details. Okay, so I have said enough. You can tell I'm
All
working.
right. Well, thank you, Caroline, for putting the icing on the cake. And
I'm worked
since
up.
you brought it up, I want to hit on the redistricting piece
Yes.
because, well, one, we know that when DeSantis first put some of these unconstitutional voting laws and restrictive voting laws, specifically for the African American community, which came out in the judges' opinions, or I guess they don't call them opinion. What do they call it when the judge writes his
Rulings? Is that what
yeah?
it's called?
So it came out that that Florida's laws was directly targeting Black communities, Black people, and trying to prevent them from voting. So right now, that those laws have been tossed, but of course, Florida is appealing. Okay, so we don't know what's going to happen just yet. But in the meantime, so that he could make some things happen, in place of those laws, just in case, we have, as of a couple of weeks ago, he implemented or enacted the redistricting. And of course, you know that during the session, the governor had said that he was going to redraw, and you had a number of Republicans, state senators, actually coming out and saying you can't do that. This is it's targeting the African American community, Black community, and so you can't do that. And he let that go for a minute, and then now we have a special session, and he has now drawn his redistricting map. And of course, the map has where there would have been, they said under the new map, Republicans are likely to win 20 of the 28 seats. I'm sorry, 20 of the 28 congressional districts.
Right.
So that means that you have 20 Republican districts and you would have 8 Democrat districts.
And just one other thing to point out, that in the census, we gained another congressional seat.
Yeah.
So not only have they increased the number of folks, that's the comment that I was making before. I think before it was like 11 to 26 because we only had 27 seats. So now, and he actually said he refused to sign anything that didn't look like the maps he drew up.
So we know, though, that this part is actually this new redistricting map is actually unconstitutional as well, because from what I've been able to gather, I guess it was somewhere about 10 years ago, right when a little after I had just moved here to Florida. Florida voters adopted the amendments to the Constitution that now govern the redistricting process here. So one of the provisions that I was able to find out was that lawmakers can't draw maps that favor any incumbent or political party. And he has specifically drawn a map that favors Republican Party. So now we do have some lawsuits and things that are underway, and we'll see how those play out. The other thing that I was able to find out is that the Constitution also says that lawmakers can't adopt maps that diminish the voting strength of communities. And because this one specifically diminishes the voting strength of Black and Brown communities, then there's one more strike against this particular map that the governor of Florida has drawn. So we really need to make sure that we stay on top of this. We don't need to acquiesce at this point. We don't need to quit. We don't need to get tired. And contrary to what the governor and some of his supporters are saying, we don't need to fall asleep at the wheel. We
Mhm.
need to stay woke. If being woke means that I am conscious of the inequities and injustices that are occurring in this country or in this world, if that's what woke means to them, then I don't understand what the problem is.
Mhm.
But they say they want you to be awake, just not woke. So Now says real quick, let me get to Now's comment. And Now says he's organized a good old boy network, and that's pretty much what they think has happened.
That's why
uh,
white supremacy operates.
Yeah. Darlene said it is their way of dividing us. I think of Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter. He will definitely control what is put on the feed. Um, and Darlene also said Florida is known or referred to as the dirty South, and rightly so. So the thing is, though, I don't want you all to miss this, because although we are talking about this, talking about Florida, um, know that these Republican states have a tendency to follow one another.
Yep.
So what you're seeing in Florida, you're also seeing in Michigan, you're also seeing in Indiana, you're seeing in Texas. You're seeing these things happen. You remember, I believe it was at the end of last year, maybe, when the Texas state representatives were in Washington, and they were doing sit-ins and all sorts of things. They had left the state during the session, because otherwise they would have been, in trouble, held in breach of their work or what have you. But because they had left the state, then they could not hold them accountable for not being at work. But they, we got to get our folks that are standing up for justice, that is speaking truth to power, and is trying their best to hold our local government and our state or federal. We have to make sure that we are supporting people that are on
Mhm.
the right side of history, that are on
Exactly.
the right side of of law, and right side of justice. So, Carrie, I'm going to be quiet and see if you have anything more to say about this redistricting situation. And if you all, um, let me know what your thoughts is. What do you think their hopes are? What they hope to accomplish by this gerrymandering redistricting map that that the governor specifically has drawn up.
Yeah, I mean, you've said a lot about it. I think the one thing, again, that I'll just remind us, this is not a new tactic. You talked about how when you first moved to Florida, there were some struggles and some litigation happening around redistricting. Again, I think this is a two-pronged approach. I am tired of us being on the defense. However, that is not to negate us not speaking up and taking action. So one of the things that I just throw out to the audience is, how many of us are members of some political advocacy group, be it ACLU, or there's Florida Rising, or Florida Voices for Health. There are organizations that we can get, even if you don't have a passion for all of the issues. We cannot allow ourselves to sit idly by and watch things happen. I think this is Martin Luther King that said, the in order for good bad deeds to go unpunished, is for good men to do nothing. And so I just want to encourage people, yes, be frustrated, be outraged, and figure out how to make it one of your priorities in addition to everything else you're doing, because our future as a country depends on it, and our future in community depends on it. So I would just say, do more than just be mad. We will share some. I'm going to share the actual full language of, it actually was Senate Bill 148. It passed as House Bill 7, known as individual freedom. I want you all to see it. I want you to understand the language. We will share some details about the current lawsuits that's happening around the redistricting. And this is the other thing that I'll say. Even if you feel like you don't have time to do a whole lot, what is one good strategy is to sign on to petitions, to add your name to these things that are happening, so that people understand that there is a volume of people who are not willing to stand idly by to allow these things to just keep going. What we cannot afford to do is just talk about it, to talk about it amongst ourselves and not do anything other than talk. So that's my 2 cents on that. I guess it was 3.
You know, the other thing I don't want people to forget, no matter where they draw the map, you still have the right to vote.
Right.
As long as you are registered to vote. Okay. So
Right.
I need for you all never to never give up your power or your agency because of these fear tactics.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of this is in hopes of doing, because I believe that the governor and some of his folks know that some of this stuff won't stand. But if they discourage you enough,
Mhm.
if they keep, you know, hitting these laws and throwing them out there as if they're set in stone, if they encourage you know, their supporters to have louder voices because they have more access to media and those other things, if they can discourage you and dissuade you from showing up at the polls, and they're going to do it.
Yeah.
Remember, we got the new voting police here in Florida. Don't forget, you know, we have the so they're going to do everything they can. And my hope for you all that are listening is that you do not get discouraged, that you relinquish your right to vote. Because when you relinquish your right, you are handing over your power.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the power that you have right now. The power of your voice, the power of your vote. Don't lose those. Don't give them away freely. Don't even sell them. Okay?
Right. Look.
You hold on to that power. And let me tell you why. Because obviously your vote
Means something.
has them running scared right now.
Yep.
That's why they have created these laws to put barriers and challenges in place to make it as hard as possible for you, because they are afraid that if you vote, their power becomes dismantled. The
Mhm.
systems that perpetuate and continue the cycles of systemic racism and things, those things begin to, they get dismantled. So their thing is, let's do everything we can to stop folks from voting. They purposefully target Black communities because they know when we vote, when we really get out there and do what we're supposed to do, we change elections.
Exactly.
Just like when we don't vote,
Black and brown people of color in
we
general.
give
There are
elections
more of
away.
us than it is of them.
That's right. So let's not give away these elections. Let's not just hand people power that don't deserve it. They don't deserve it because they don't know how to handle power. They don't know how to handle leadership. So we have the right to take that power from them. And not only do our governor not know how to handle power and leadership, he also don't know how to manage our tax dollars that he has been wasting our money. This special session, wasting our money. This whole idea of putting these voting police in place. This is a man that came out and said Florida was the poster child for voting without issues. We had the best voting system there is in Florida. And yet he has implemented all these things that are costing us tax dollars. This lawsuit that we will now have to pay for.
Right.
So what I'm saying to you all, not only is he mismanaging his power, he's mismanaging your tax dollars. Now, there should be some outrage and concern about that, since we know that the cost of living in Florida has gone up tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's gone all over the country, but let me tell y'all what's happening in Florida right now.
Right. And there should be an impact in November during the re-election. All of these things.
Yes.
I want to raise another point, because I think this piece around the legislation also ties into another point that you brought up. I mean, the redistricting actually ties into another point that we mentioned earlier, and that was the Disney special taxing district. And let me just say a couple things on this before I jump into the subject matter. So what we are seeing here is the dichotomy around wordplay. What is being said and espoused as the things that the governor and folks who identify as Republican claim to be their values, and the things that they're actually doing. So if you believe in personal freedom and reduction of government oversight, which is two of the values that Republicans espouse, that's what they say, then how do you justify the most recent actions of things that include the legislation, but not just that? I mean, we could go on and talk about some of the other things that have happened in the state, namely how the COVID pandemic response has been addressed. So let's just go back to the conversation at hand. The reality is, one of the things he and of the governors have also said is that they are pro-business. The identification and creation of a special taxing district was primarily for the reason of getting Walt Disney World here. So now all of a sudden, all these things that you espouse to be true and to care about no longer matter once they actually take a stand and disagree with you on something. So I think we have the opportunity to also hold him accountable to what he says versus what he does. Because the truth of the matter is, if you are voting based on policy and platform, if we can prove and we can demonstrate that the things that have been approved and developed in this current governor's platform do not align to the things that he says he espouses in the Republican Party, then that's a reason to tell people this is not about bashing DeSantis. This is about going straight to the record.
Right.
This is what you said. This is what happened. Right. Those are the things that we need to talk about. We need to speak about people's record, the things that can be proved, not just our feelings. I don't particularly care from him because of the things that he's doing, but that's irrelevant. What I am concerned about is that what he says he believes in is not aligned to the things that he supports. Yeah. So I'm going back to the whole Disney situation. The other thing, and there is reason to believe from emails and from documentation and research that's done, that he actually made a comment about Disney, quote unquote, picking a fight with him and choosing the wrong person, which is akin to authoritative dictatorship type of, I want to say control. I don't even want to use that word, but governance. That's a problem. And if we get caught up in the noise of, quote unquote, complaining and talking about DeSantis, people will not hear us. There is a strong political machine. For the first time that I can remember, I have been behind vehicles that say Ron DeSantis, best governor ever. Now, I'm not saying that there were not other governors who had that message, but I had not seen bumper stickers and the amount of public campaign and publicity that are going just to raise awareness around his name. But none of that can be compared to his record, the things that he has signed into law, the things that he has vetoed, the things that he has supported, the things that he's allocated dollars to in his budget. Those are the pieces, the facts that we have to keep going back to. We have to, one, know them for ourselves, and
Mhm.
two, use them. I'm not encouraging you to get into political debate with people, but I am encouraging you to understand what the record shows and use that as discussion points for the work that we have ahead. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for saying that, Carrie, because it really goes back to what I started this conversation with, which is all of these things that people are cheering on right now. They're
Mhm.
cheering on these laws and they're not paying attention to how they will impact them. Maybe not today,
Right,
but
right.
these laws are will come back to hunt a lot of businesses that think it's okay because they think it's working in their favor. A lot of individuals. So let me just real quick. Some of you that probably haven't, that aren't from Florida, you may not know what has happened here with Disney. Carrie just touched on that a little bit. So I guess back in 1967, Disney was granted a special district known as Reedy County so that they'd be allowed to tax themselves. So Disney taxed itself so that it could pay for its own roads, its own fire, police, emergency medical, and utilities and things. Well, when DeSantis just about a few weeks ago passed the legislation that was it's being called, and Carrie, you have to give me the specific section and bill of it, but
Okay.
it was called the "Don't Say Gay" bill, which I don't like how they're using that. I know what people are trying to say and do, but I don't want it to have an adverse effect on the work of the gay community. But what I do know is that Disney CEO came out and said, "Listen, we're standing in solidarity with the gay community." And because they did, DeSantis went back. Now listen, I wasn't in the room when he made the decision, but a day after Disney Disney did what they did, and he pushed forth this legislation, he came back and said, "Yeah, we're going to be looking at Disney." Now, I did see that press conference. We're going to be looking at Disney and this whole special district that they are allowed to have, their own little city. Nobody should be able to have their own little city. So we're going to be looking at Disney.
This
Um,
is not the only one. Let's just be clear.
okay, so the name of the bill is Parental Rights and Education Bill. Thank you, Carrie. So in doing so, um, he then, a couple of weeks during this special session, now Disney, as in 2023, they will have their special district status removed. The issue with that is that once Disney have their special district status removed, that means that somebody has to be paying these taxes, right? Somebody now has to cover the roads and all of those things for Disney. Somebody has to be their first responders and their utilities persons. And so, what happens in Florida, that will fall on the counties closest to Reedy County. So,
Mhm.
that would be Osceola and Orange County. So they will now become responsible for the taxes that Disney won't have to worry about. Um, and based on what they're saying right now, that should probably be about $164 million. That may change over time. But that's kind of the guesstimate based on what they have been uh, using over the past few years.
Mhm.
So now we know that the governor, like I said, is once again charging or costing tax dollars. He's making it where people are losing money. But I guess if you are happy and excited about this bill, that really impacts children's mental health and and even how they engage in education and things, then maybe you're okay with it. So listen, y'all are quiet this evening. I want y'all to come on now, talk to us. So
Yeah, what questions do you have? I mean, there's additional information we can tell
yeah,
you
if you have
specifically about Read to Create.
questions, please make sure that you go ahead and leave us some comments. Talk back to us. Is this informative? Let us know what you're thinking.
Does any of this resonate? Are you likely to take action?
Okay. So the last thing we want to touch on, because we only have 8 minutes, is this whole new thing on this banning of books.
Oh,
So you all know that the governor banned, I think it was like 54 math books because apparently he said they had language in it that was about race and things. And based on what some of the folks that have reviewed the book said, that there was a few of the books that used a language that was really more about, it was about social emotional learning, which is what a lot of teachers use so that students can manage their emotions, develop empathy, solve problems, and make decisions. It's what we want our children to learn while they're in school, right? We don't want our kids to go to school and just be robots. So school is designed to give our kids book knowledge, but also emotional knowledge so that they then learn how to deal with a broader public as they get older.
mm-hmm.
It's to help them learn how to have empathy. It's to help them learn how to accept consequences for their actions. It's to help kids learn how to be civil in society. But apparently, not in Florida. So 54 books were banned. And now we have this other particular organization. I won't even give them, I'm not going to give them a commercial. Okay, on Tuesday Together Talk. There's just this other organization in Florida that is seeking to ban even more books. And so they're asking, they have a laundry list of books to be banned in Florida in the libraries, in schools, in different places. Uh, so, my question to you all, do you agree with banning books in academic institutions? Now, I'm feeling this way. I think it's real simple. If you don't want your child checking out a book in school, since we have all this technology now, why not just have the parents to do a parental guidance so that when a kid is going to check out a book, then we know, nope, your parents said that, these books you can't check out. Or if a kid is going to check out a book, then the librarian can say, okay, we need to get your parents' permission.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many other avenues other than banning books, because the reality is this: although you don't want your kid to read a certain book, specifically books by Maya Angelou, Alice Walker, I'm sorry, Zora Neale Hurston, some of those books, you don't want them to read those books. Um, you don't want them to read those books, but the reality is, if they're a certain age and they got friends, and their friends can go get the book for them anyway.
Right.
It's just that simple.
Right.
So while you're trying to ban books in academic institutions because you're afraid of what your children are going to learn, this most recent book was a baby book, because they said the imaging on the front of the cover looked like there was a same-sex couple. So they said ban the books. So it's just so much foolishness that's going on right now concerning academic institutions, because let's be honest, when you start saying let's ban books, let's ban certain books, then you start to run into trouble with, then anybody can say banning certain books. So I did see a little article going around yesterday that certain atheists in Florida was seeking to ban the Bible because apparently, since based on the governor's criteria,
Right.
a
Right.
Bible would fit right into that category. And so now it's, well, if you're banning these books, then the Bible fits into that category as well. So I'm going to hush and I'm going to look at these comments, Carrie, and let you say what you need to say, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about some of these comments we have here.
Yep. Okay. So I'm just going to say the same thing again. These are not new tactics. It's not the first time that books have been banned. There are more than one way to handle it. Oftentimes, when books get banned, the curiosity rises and more books are sold. I don't know if that's the situation now.
Yes.
But again, this goes back to the comment that I was making about right, Ms. Carolyn. Yeah. This goes back to the conversation that we were having about there are no new tactics. And so that's why it's so important for us. And I keep bringing that up because I want us to recognize that this means it's not hopeless.
Yes.
This means, again, as we've already talked about, we have been successful. That is why people are scared. That is why they're making these attempts. They're trying these same strategies, these same tactics in a new environment, thinking that we don't remember and we don't know what to do. Yeah. We have the same tools and techniques that we've had before. Organizing and advocating and lobbying and using this, using our voice have always been the tools that we've had. They are the tools that we must continue to use, specifically as the other side has become more aggressive.
Thank you, Carrie, so much. So let's get to some of these comments.
Okay.
Darlene says we're certainly living in an interesting time, and we are. We absolutely are. The problem is, you all know that Bridge is all about Ubuntu, really understanding our interrelatedness and our human togetherness. The problem is that we live in a country that just can't grasp the concept that we are dependent. We are interdependent. We can't get around it.
Yeah.
And so when you try to hurt me with your laws, ultimately you hurt yourself.
Yep.
You hurt yourself. And when, you know, these Christian folks who get up and go into their churches and declare that they are Bible believing people, but still don't have love and compassion for their brothers and sisters. Yes, Aunt Darlene, we're living in interesting times. Lisa Fried. Hey, Lisa, very informative. I am learning a lot tonight. Thank you so much. Make sure spread the word. What we don't want is for us to sit in this conversation and then just keep it to ourselves. We need to make sure that we're spreading the word about what's going on. We have to do the educating. Right. You know, that spread that word, have the conversation, point them back to this video. That would be great. Share the video. That would be great, so that people can start understanding that they do have the power and the agency to make a difference, that we don't have to just sit back and let stuff happen to us.
Right.
Now, we saw my mama's comment, Hitler banned books. Yep. But not only banned them, burned them.
Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, what really drives me nuts is the fact that how can you think that your children will be prepared,
right,
for the world? Because we don't just play on the United States stage. I don't care how much we try.
We forget that.
That's where our interdependence, our interrelatedness circles around this world. How do you think your children are going to be able to play on the world stage and maneuver in a country or even in the world if they don't have the knowledge it takes? And that means you learn stuff that you don't agree with, and you learn things that you do agree with. The only way you learn what you don't like is you got to learn it. You can't just depend upon, oh, I like all of this stuff here. Okay. So Jerry Lee, hey, Jerry, great information. Many people don't realize that the Don't Say Gay bill affects in so many areas. Absolutely. So, and that's
parental rights and education.
Yeah. Say again.
Parental rights and education.
That's right. Parental rights in education. The problem is we need some thinking parents, though. I mean,
That's
this,
the irony of it. Nobody told you that parents had an issue with it. You all came up with that on your own.
you know,
No, Google would need to be
to
banned if
answer
they
the
want
question,
children
no,
to
Google
not
would
be
need to
offended.
be banned if they want children to not be offended. That's right. Children are going to seek information on any topic that matters to them.
That they're curious about, that they're interested
And they're
in.
supposed to be curious. That's the thing. Now, any professor, any good professor anywhere, any educator anywhere would tell you they want their students to be curious learners. That's what they want. They want their students to then know how to go into a library and pull a book off the shelf to do
Mhm,
research and
mhm.
then be able to ask themselves those questions. Does this theory make sense? If it don't make sense, then I can write a thesis, I can write a dissertation, I can do whatever I want to do to then have my argument. We do that with journal articles, scholarly journal works and stuff. We write these critiques. That's what we're supposed to do. What we are not supposed to do is decide that, okay, well, I'm going to just ban everything that I don't agree with. Well, I guess they can, but a lot of good it's doing. Jerry says the world works in a way that if we say don't do this, they will do it. So this just might work in our favor in the long run. You're right, Jerry. Because if we tell our kids, don't be reading, they will definitely go back to reading. Yes, we will be sharing this video. Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing the video. I appreciate you all so much. I feel like I have forgotten something. So, Carrie, I'm gonna let you talk for a few minutes while I try to look at my notes and see if I can remember what
Well, I
I
would just say thank you. It's
forgot.
always great to be back with the Tuesday Together Talk family. I hope I'm glad, Lisa. Thank you for sharing that this was informational, that it was helpful. When we finish up, I'm actually going to go and add some additional comments that have some of the language of the bills that we've talked about, but also some articles that you can refer to. Because at the end of the day, I don't want you to just take my word for it. I don't want you
Yeah.
to just take Reverend Rebecca's word for it. I want you all to be informed
Yes.
yourself.
Thinking people. We want you to
Yes.
think, you know?
Critical thinking. Critical thinking. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. So now you know a little bit more, hopefully, about Senate Bill 148 that we talked about. You also know a little bit more about the Parental Rights and Education Bill, which I believe is House Bill 1557, right? Okay.
Right. Right.
And so, and now you have more information on this whole ideal of banning textbooks. You know, I don't have children in school anymore, in elementary school and high school, but what I do know at this point, the loudest squeal or whatever, that gets the attention.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Squeaky
what
wheel
I'm
gets the
suggesting,
grease. Yeah.
say what is
Squeaky wheel gets squeaky wheel gets the grease.
I had the squeal, the squeak. Okay.
I knew where you were going with it.
But, so the loudest scream, the squeaky wheel, any of
Yeah.
those things, what I'm suggesting to you parents, if you have children in school, don't let one side of the one side own this
Right.
particular measure, this law. Don't let one side dictate that they want all of these books banned and it's
Yeah.
okay. Learn how to advocate for your children. Absolutely. Learn how to speak truth to power. Learn. Don't let other people dictate what your kids can learn, because the problem is this, for so long, a lot of our youngsters weren't really familiar with a lot of Black authors and things. And a lot of these books on these lists are from Black authors. And so we don't need somebody saying that our kids can't learn. what we desire for them to learn. So that's the other side of the argument. Yeah, you don't want your children to learn it, and that's fine, but I want my kid to learn this. So let's find some balance in this parental rights of education law. At some point, these children will have to compete in the real world, not this world of make believe that many of these groups and parents are trying to promote as reality. Perhaps it is reality for them. However, for a great deal of society, specifically people, Black people and Brown people experiencing inequities, injustice, and racism, this is not our reality that these laws are trying to speak to. But let's turn these laws around on them. That's all. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Caroline, for joining me once again on Tuesday Together Talk. Y'all know I'll have her back at some point soon. Listen, we are putting together our panel for our next conversation. Our next conversation will be privilege, colorism, and natural hair. Say what? Yes, we're going to have a conversation about it, because what we want for you to know is that we have agency and power. And so we need to start talking about some of these things that are dividing the Black community. And the divide has been implemented not by us. Unfortunately, we continue to perpetuate the divide. So we're going to have some real conversation. All right, privilege, colorism, and natural hair. All right,
Oh, now.
all right. God bless you all again. I'm Reverend Rebecca Burrow. I am the founder and CEO of Building Reconciliation, Inclusion, Diversity, and Gender Equity. You can find us at www.reconciliationandequity.com, or you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Reconciliation and Equity. By the way, if you want to check this video out on YouTube, go on over and you can find us on YouTube at Reconciliation and Equity. Just put Reconciliation and Equity, make it one word, put it in your search and on YouTube, and you'll be able to find us over there. So thank you all again. Keep following us so that you can be aware of our conversations. I also would love to get your ideas on conversations that you might be interested in hearing. And if you want to be a part of a conversation, let me know. I would love to see you on Tuesday Together Talk. All right, Carrie, you got any last words before we say goodnight?
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you. All right, y'all. So y'all just hang on in there for our outtake, and we're gonna be saying goodnight to you. Lo, it was good to see you tonight. Let me just throw that out. It's good to see all of y'all tonight. But y'all know Lo started with us, and we haven't seen her in a while. So it's just good that she's able to hang out with us tonight. God bless you all. Have a safe week. Register to vote.
Register, vote.
All right. God bless you all. Let's go ahead and get this show off the road for this evening.